Welcome, everyone. It's great to see you all here. My name is Jeff Kralenston, and I'm publisher of Research Money. We're delighted to be partnering with Natural Products Canada to bring you this webinar called Canada's Path to the $4 Trillion Global Bioeconomy. It's a big one. Some technical things. If you're having any difficulties with the Zoho platform, please let us know in the chat. And Danielle will help you out. You'll see the chat in the top left of your screen next to attendees. The session's being recorded, and you'll be able to access the recording on YouTube maybe 1 or 2 weeks after the webinar is over. If you have any questions for the panelists, please use the Q&A tab, which is also up in the top left, or at the bottom with the question mark in it, the little bubble with the question mark. You can get to it there. Don't put your questions in the chat because we're going to be monitoring the Q&A tab for the questions. If you happen to mistakenly do that, though, we'll move it for you. Now, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Shelley King, the CEO of Natural Products Canada. Shelley will open the webinar and moderate the panel, and I'll come back after the Q&A to close the session. So over to you, Shelley.
Thank you very much, Jeff. So for the folks joining in online, we're really glad to be here today. I'll be introducing our panelists a little bit later, but first I just wanted to give you, for those of you who may not know us, a little bit of an overview of Natural Products Canada. So we really exist to help Canada seize the $4 trillion opportunity in the global bioeconomy. Next slide, please. And next slide. Oh, there we go. So really this opportunity is coming from a variety of factors. We're all aware of the increasing challenges of climate change, and accompanying that there is a growing interest in sustainable products and technologies. We see industry and governments around the world setting ambitious targets to replace harmful products with ones that are healthier and better for people, animals, and the planet. And we also see a growing population, with the most latest estimate being 10 billion people by 2050. And along with that, there are projections that about half of all products sold will be bio-based by 2050. So it really represents a tremendous opportunity for Canada. So we are well poised to seize 5%. Next slide, please. We are poised to seize 5% of this opportunity, generating a $200 billion in new economic activity. We have the benefits of strong academic institutions and stable governments, but we also have significant advantages in the key inputs in the bioeconomy, such as our forests, freshwater, and agricultural lands. Next slide, please. So with all the potential, we do have some challenges, as most of you on the call know. We're really great at research, not so great at commercializing bio-based innovation. And we also have insufficient capital really to support the growth of the bioeconomy. Globally, over 60 countries have adopted national bioeconomy strategies so that they can leverage the value-added inputs in their region. Canada, unfortunately, does not yet have a bioeconomy strategy, and this is resulting in a lack of coordination and collaboration of key players across the country. And in fact, Canada has lost over 900,000 jobs in the bioeconomy from 1997 to 2020. Next slide, please. So we are really here to help Canada get its share of the $4 trillion market by bolstering early stage natural and bio-based innovation. Next slide. And first and foremost, we focus on capital. And our capital is really the secret sauce that drives early stage companies to increase productivity and create economic prosperity. We act like strategic angels in developing and de-risking each opportunity, and we understand how critical capital is for early stage companies. We have since our inception, we have used various financial instruments, including debt, non-dilutive, grant funding, and equity to help companies advance. And we also spun off a $50 million equity fund called Nordera Ventures to ensure that late seed or Series A capital continues to flow to worthy-based Canadian companies in the natural space. And that fund just announced their first investment in September, and we are eagerly awaiting their next couple of investments. Next slide, please. So at NPC, we like to say we have a national focus with a regional presence. We have a team of 11 employees, small but mighty teams spread across the country, and we are in constant communication to help ensure that resources and expertise from across the country are getting to the early stage companies wherever they may be located. In doing so, we foster more coordination, cooperation, and collaboration across the country and beyond. Next slide. We are firm believers in ecosystem. Every part of our work is made stronger by our strategic network. We work hard to build value for each of our members, and we design all of our programs and services to ensure that they are connected technologies and innovations and expertise that companies need to succeed. And with that, we help the whole ecosystem grow and thrive. So that's real. All of this is really good in theory, but how do we do it all with a team of 10? And the simple answer is we focus on advice, connections, and capital. Next slide, please. So we offer advisory services to provide guidance on things like the commercialization path and really identify the next best step with our entrepreneurs. And then we ensure that we have the connections to the right technical and business resources, no matter where they exist in Canada or elsewhere. Next slide, please. So for example, if we look at a company like Nature's Crops International based in Prince Edward Island, we help them identify new market opportunity that use a costly byproduct of their production process, which resulted in a new source of potential revenue. Next slide, please. In terms of connections, we really want to make the right connection at the right time. So we curate strategic connections. We've built this 4,000 plus community from basically the ground up. And we have created a vibrant network and a suite of resources to help advance Canada's bioeconomy. And we've provided over 2,400 network introductions and launched numerous communications and networking events to showcase and connect our members over the past several years. Next slide, please. If we look at Zila BioWorks, we introduced them to an investor in our network, and that helped them close their first seed investment round. Next slide, please. So with Perspective Capital, as I said, we provide capital. We currently deploy non-dilutive capital up to $350,000 to help develop and de-risk opportunities. So we have a fast track to financing program, smaller pot of funds, but it's really designed to help companies round out their business or their commercialization plans to attract financing. Access to talent, we provide up to $150,000 to find key hires that can fulfill a gap in a team or a gap in a management team to ensure that growth deliverables are achieved. And finally, our proof of concept is up to $350,000 to conduct trials, whether they be field trials, clinical trials, animal trials, to demonstrate the commercial feasibility of a product or technology. Next slide, please. So we're quite proud of our Game Changers report, which shows the 82 companies that we have that have benefited from our capital. And those are just not faces on the cover of the report. Those are the actual owners and founders that we invest in. You can find the report online at Game Changers, CanadianGameChangers.ca. And in that report, you'll see a profile on each of the companies and a short description of the challenge that they were facing and how our funds help them overcome some of these challenges. Next slide, please. So each story in our Game Changers report is impressive, and collectively, this group shows us that is working. They have tremendous results in key productivity factors such as R&D, product development, IP, and exports. If we just walk through this slide kind of from left to right, we have invested $9.1 million in 82 early stage companies. Most of these companies have less than 10 employees, and they are very, very early stage and usually pre-revenue. So these companies have gone on to develop 260 new products. And more importantly, with those new products, they have generated $282 million in revenue, added over 400 new jobs, and they filed 82 patents and have increased R&D spending to 52% of total expenditures. So perhaps the biggest sign of their success is their ability to attract follow-on capital. So these companies have gone on to attract almost another $480 million in capital. And so that means that for every dollar that we invest on behalf of the federal government, these companies are able to attract an additional $53. Next slide, please. So today I'm pleased to have a few of those game changers with me. Jennifer Cote from Opalia, Tyler Whale from Biodiffusion Technologies, Ming Sung from Nature Recombined Sciences, and Mina from Fresher Technologies. So I'm going to pass it over to the panel now to start their introductions. Jennifer, we will start with you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jennifer, and I'm the CEO and co-founder at Opalia. We are a startup based in Montreal, and we make milk without cows. So our technology makes whole milk using cells that we're taking from the bovine mammary glands, so the cow udder, basically. And we are able to grow these cells in our lab and to make milk with all of the components, so proteins, fats, and lactose. And the goal is to make milk that can then be turned into all kinds of dairy products like cheese, ice cream, you name it, but that has a lesser environmental footprint. So our technology uses less land, less water, and also produces less methane. And also in terms of production, it's highly efficient. It produces about 16 times more milk in the same given space. So therefore, there's a huge opportunity to meet the growing demand in dairy products as the population increases. So happy to tell you a bit more about this later. I guess I'll popcorn over to Ming.
Thank you, Jennifer. Tyler, you're next.
And can you hear me?
We can.
Good. So I'll start by saying, imagine the impact of carbon negative roads. It's maybe hard to believe, but Biodiffusion Technologies manufactures a novel 100% plant-based bioresin that has excellent binding and sealing properties. It's produced in the form of a shelf-stable water-based emulsion that when it cures behaves a lot like bitumen. Bitumen is the sticky material used in asphalt production that's produced from fossil fuels, for those who don't know. So our material is sticky, hydrophobic, and flexible. And when combined with or applied to different materials, it can add strength as a glue or binder in gravel, for example, or it can seal porous materials like wood, concrete, roofing, packaging, for example. And those are examples of future markets that we'll be targeting. In 2022, we constructed the first commercial facility in Cambridge, Ontario, and we've been focusing on our two lead market applications in road construction and dust suppression. So for dust suppression activities are things like tarping, mining stockpiles, municipal construction sites to prevent windborne dust, erosion, that kind of thing. But the bulk of our attention for now is focused on roads because that's what this resin was initially developed for. So every year we have many hundreds of millions of tons of asphalt placed on roads worldwide. Some refer to it as the world's biggest acceptable oil spill. While asphalt is highly recyclable, though, most often virgin hot mix asphalt only contains a small amount of the recycled quantity or the recycled asphalt pavement that is possible. And so the road market is developing technologies like rejuvenants to increase the amount of recycled asphalt pavement, or RAP, and improve the cost and reduce environmental impact. And our resin is an excellent rejuvenant that enables much larger quantities of RAP to be used. So our goal would be to enable 100% recycled road that is cold paved, what's called a cold in place recycling. And what's more, our bioresin can be incorporated into various other applications like base layers to add significant strength to the base and therefore longevity of the base of a road, which results in longer lasting driving surfaces. We have a superior solution for pothole repair as well, and an extensive R&D program that is exploring more ways to make roads better, cheaper, and greener. So what we need now comes in two categories. First, clients or early adopters. So essentially those things that will generate the needed cash flow to accelerate our penetration into the market. As you might imagine, the road construction industry is huge. It's fragmented. It's relatively conservative and slow from a startup's perspective, at least, to adopt new technologies. And understandably, many ideas have been tried in road construction and have performed poorly. So there is a reluctance to waste more time and money on new things, even when you have proof of performance. And again, every road is different. Every road has unique challenges, but we have to get more clients earlier and faster. Second, we would benefit from accelerated regulatory approval. Maybe I'll say who wouldn't. Many of our clients, which are the municipal public works decision makers, rely on standards or accreditation set by entities like the MTO, or at state level in the US by the state level DOTs, Department of Transportations, to verify that technology has acceptable performance data. It's a process that takes time, but a more robust support structure to accelerate new and impactful technologies to essentially accomplish these ambitious climate goals that we have would be very, very useful. Fortunately, we have found both interested and risk-tolerant clients already willing to test new innovations, as well as a few key companies, most notably Dufferin Construction in Ontario, to work with us on both lab and field testing at commercial scale. We've got 3 applications in roads that are commercial ready and two to three others nearing commercial readiness. And we're anticipating that 2025 is going to be a great growth year for our company. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Tyler. I was having some technical difficulties. I couldn't see you there for a minute, but I could at least hear you. Ming, you're next.
Hey, everybody. So we have a pretty simple story. Sounds simple. We saved the bees. So it sounds simple, but it's quite a complicated story. And the reason why it matters is because out of the just over 100 crops that growing in the world that provides 90% of the food that we're eating every day, that over 70 of them are actually pollinated by bees. So this is a huge link to our food securities and our daily livelihood. So, but today the global bees are actually suffering from increasing death, and to a point where a few years ago in North America, Canada, and US, the beekeepers been losing almost 50% of their bees. So just imagine the fundamental impact this is going to have on everybody's food on your table every day in the near future. Like I said, it's a very complicated story. The reason why all the bees and pollinators alike are dying today, a big part of it is because they're disease pathogens, pests that been increasing their resistance levels towards their treatments to synthetic chemicals, for example. And then that's where my company comes in. I'm the co-founder of Nature Recombined Sciences. And we come up with a natural plant-based solution to address the bee health issues, to improve their health and to help them fight against these pathogens and pests. So that's a little bit about us. I'm happy to chat more later as well.
Thank you, Ming. Much appreciated. And last but not least, we have Nina, a fellow Haligonian. Over to you.
Thanks, Shelley. My name is Mina Mikhail. I am the CEO and founder of Fresher Technologies. We develop sustainable active packaging to extend the shelf life of fresh proteins. And we're starting with fresh seafood as our entry market. Our technology is composed of naturally derived ingredients that we immobilize on the surface of film. Some of the film we use is compostable, some of it is post-consumer recycled. When that coating gets in contact with a protein like a salmon, which is our first product to market, it extends its shelf life by 15 to 30%. So the problem we're actually after is to put a dent in the food waste problem in the world. The statistics are food waste, if it was a country, would be the third biggest emitter of GHGs after the US and China. And it costs the world around $1 trillion of lost economic value. So we're trying to extend the shelf life of fresh proteins so that they are consumed and not wasted. And we are looking to cut down our methane emissions. And we have a target actually by 2030 to take that down by almost 120 kilotons, and by 2050 to be close to 1 billion. So we are very much an environmentally focused company using bio materials, naturally derived, to solve the food waste problem. So yeah, happy to chat a bit more about what we do as we go on.
Thank you, Nina. So you can see that within our Game Changers report, these are just examples of the great companies we have, but there's such diversity in what challenges and problems they are solving using natural or biological solutions. However, they do have things in common. When we reached out to survey the 80 plus companies in our report earlier this spring, there were a few common challenges that rose to the forefront. The first, and perhaps not surprising, was access to capital, whether that be dilutive, non-dilutive in terms of a grant, or private capital like angel or venture capital. So I will call out your names, but the question is really, what capital challenges has your company faced, and what have you done to overcome them? So I mean, I'm going to start with you first this time.
Oh, sure. Thanks, Shelley. Yeah, capital. That's like the most important thing for any startup. Capital is the fuel that fuels the growth of a startup. Obviously, motivation from founders and the team is kind of the engine that takes in that fuel and turns it into an activity to move that technology forward. So without capital, we can't be doing anything really. And because we are, our company is a deep tech company, that means there's a lot of hard science that goes behind what we do to develop the technology. It takes time. It's not a simple, it doesn't take overnight. Unlike SaaS-based models, which you could iterate on it fairly quickly and you could deploy beta versions and you can improve on it. In our case, we cannot deploy something unless it meets a minimum standard of applicability in the market. So I would say we have a kind of a long product development cycle. So when you're looking for capital, that's kind of important because a lot of VCs want a quick flip around. I want to turn this over within the next few years, and you need capital that is patient investors who are willing to kind of go the long term with you and see the long term value. The interesting thing about deep tech is, even though the product development cycle is longer, but the potential value that could be captured is a lot bigger in the future once the technology is developed, scaled up, and is in the market. So in our case, one of the things I learned as founder for the past 6.5 years or so is that open yourself up early on to capital from beyond Canada. So the Canadian VC ecosystem is good, but it's fairly conservative. The US has a lot more appetite for kind of big goals, and there are some patient investors in the US as well. So one of the things we did early on is to kind of look beyond Canada. We do have a lot of investments from Canada so far, but we are kind of expanding into the US and potentially in Europe as well. So that's something I'm keeping in mind. I would say also one of the things we learned is it's good to think global early on, like not necessarily restrict ourselves to the Canadian market. It's good to think global from an early stage. And what that does is it kind of exposes you to the venture capital in different regions of the world as well, not just customers or potential customers. So it opens up the opportunities to network with European VCs, American VCs early on. And even if they don't invest because you're still early, but you at least have those contacts that might come in at later stages, Series A, B, or C. So these are just some of the learnings on my end, and obviously non-dilutive is key. We did receive NPCs 250,000 for our building up our first scale-up line, which was a turning point in our company, because everything we've been doing before then was in the lab, and now we now have a line that can take this batch to batch production that we've been doing in the lab to a continuous production that is semi-automated. And that was thanks to NPC funding.
Thank you, Mina. It was quite a treat to get to visit your shop a few weeks ago. So thank you for that. Jennifer, how about you?
So I guess a lot of the similar experiences to Mina. I would say one of the biggest challenges for us is that we did not come from a university at all. So all of our research was spun out from our team. So finding capital to fund foundational research is really hard. No one wants to take the bets. I think there's a lot of pointing fingers to like, no, you fund this, you fund this, you fund that. So it's a bit hard to navigate all of this. So definitely, I can tell how important it is to invest in, having grants basically to support some of the foundational research, like proof of concept program is one of the things that we have also benefited from. So the key, I think, is really to join both dilutive and non-dilutive together and kind of build a stepping stone of working on a milestone with grants and then securing dilutive capital, private capital following the achievement of that milestone. So for us, trying to build a very concrete plan of milestone to funding at every step was kind of our strategy. Like Mina said, networking really early on before you even need funding, because I think the best way to build trust and to kind of lessen the risk for investors is to know your company. And I personally really like transparency, telling them what our challenges are and how we plan to overcome these challenges with dilutive and non-dilutive funding, kind of getting them to really understand why their capital is fundamental to the development of the technology is kind of our strategy. So yeah, I would say risk is always at the center of any funding conversation. So the partnership of non-dilutive and dilutive funding is really key, and understanding how they work together is also super important.
Thank you, Jennifer. Ming.
Yeah. So first of all, I want to kind of set the stage when we talk about capitals in Canada. So far, we benefited as a company quite a bit from the Canadian non-dilutive scene. It's like several different agencies, including NPC, providing the non-dilutive capitals to us to advance our work, which is great, right? So, and that's one big factor on the positive side for capitals here in Canada. And now if we're talking about capital challenges, and I also want to narrow down that scope into just deep tech. I echo Mina a lot of the things that both Mina and Jennifer mentioned, because we're all in the deep tech space. And when you think anybody and go and ask the question, which one in Canada, which agency is there to fund specifically deep tech, like you probably wouldn't really come up with a name right away. And that is one thing that I think is lacking in Canada. on deep tech. And Mina mentioned about VCs, for example, that has a strong focus on SaaS focus or SaaS products or so on and so forth. Maybe that's a child that's left from the Y2K, from the internet era, and has a lot of the inherited benefits of having quick irritations, maybe fast to markets, less regulation hurdles, which are all favored by VCs, by many VCs. But if you look at, on the other hand, the things that we're developing today has such tremendous impact, which are a lot of times, frankly, talked by many VCs or whatnot. But when you peel that away and you look deeper and you go like, okay, all right, you said what you want to do, and this is a great audacious goal that you're as a VC want to achieve. Who is doing the legwork? Who is actually providing that capital? And then you all of a sudden just see a lot of them shy away. And I think as a venture capital scene in Canada really is not as vibrant as the US or elsewhere. And that's one thing that is lacking. And the second thing, what I think Canadian kind of funding capital system as a whole is lacking some diversity and flexibility in there. Well, when I say diversity, is that when you look at growing an early stage company, it's basically growing a baby. If you put yourself in the shoe as a parent, and as the baby grows, it doesn't just need one thing, it needs many things. As the company grows, it needs funding to inject it into R&D in the deep tech space especially. It needs funding to be injected into protecting and developing new IP. It needs funding maybe just even to hire lawyers and to take care of the day-to-day and the operations, all those legal contracts, and also other things, daily operations, so on and so forth. And then you look at the non-dilutive fundings or whatnot from Canada. I think a lot of them are focused on the R&D part of it. But in terms of kind of diversifying that and maybe have some funding to support talents, to support just the IP, to support maybe hiring special people like contractors, like lawyers or whatnot. And I think there's lack of that structure in there as well. Well, MPC has good kind of three lineages right now. Some supports early stage marketing, which is also something that I have not really seen a lot. Okay. And that is a critical part for growing early stage company. You're going to know your path. You're going to know the rocks and stones and roadblocks that's along the way. And not many companies that have specific things to fund that. And number two, and talents, right? Like it's nice to see some companies are now started to recognize all these different silos and importance in the early startup companies and started to develop that, which is great. And but it still needs to grow. We need to have more. And I think that's kind of the major challenges that we've been seeing in the last 4 years as a startup. And the other challenge that we have seen, I'm gonna just say it out loud, nobody finds founders. Everybody is like, hey, founders, you guys got shares. So no, we're going to fund other aspects of your company, but not you guys, which is a concept I totally do not understand at all. Because if you ask anyone who is the most driven to push this company to see it developed and see the product, see the fruits and work hard on it, and it is the founders. And we asked many non-dilutives, and also VCs, it's not in this conversation, but it's non-dilutives. Like nobody funds the founders, which is kind of frustrating for us to see. And so in terms of how we kind of, navigated this and get the helps and the capitals, the non-dilutives, like I said, it was a big help for us. And the rest of it is really, there's no secret sauce. You're just going to have to do everything. You're going to do shred claims. You're going to have to ask family and friends for helps, bootstrap, and then just put them all together. And that's helped the startup to survive.
Thank you, Ming. And last but not least, Tyler, I'll just say this. I know sometimes it's hard when you don't see. I mean, going to Fisher was eye-opening for me. And then a couple of weeks ago, I was on LinkedIn, and there was Tyler with his road gear on, demoing his product in, I'm going to say Guelph, but it may not have been Guelph, was it? No. Anyway, if you get somewhere in Ontario, if you get a chance to find, it's worth a completely different perspective. So with that, Tyler, why don't you talk about your your capital challenges or lack thereof. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry about that.
Okay, there you go.
It's kind of funny seeing myself on a video building a road when I don't have a background in civil engineering or anything. I have no right building a road, but I've learned a lot in 2 years, and we've called upon 2 job sites to guide crews and help make this thing a reality. And that's been something that NPC has been instrumental in dealing with. So I'll deal with the capital, but I wanted to reflect on something Ming said about funding founders. It's a very interesting thing to talk about, Ming. And I did hear from a number of venture groups in the past that says we don't want to fund first-time founders because most of the money goes into training those founders rather than advancing the company. So there are some difficulties there. And I think what that means is get some experience on your team. Make sure you've got some people who've been down the road of being a founder or an entrepreneur before. Tremendously valuable. And I'm the youngest guy on our team at 49 years old, and I'm not saying that's necessarily an asset. The other asset we had was a lawyer who really helped us navigate through the contracts and all the agreements that nobody else has time or patience to look through, but that has proven to be valuable. So we've got a bit of a different story. Our company is already 20 years old, and we're commercializing it. So it had a lot of background research. It had been produced at some version of pilot scale in the past, about 500,000 liters a year. But we didn't have that facility anymore. So our first challenge was to show people that we could make this product, get it back into testing. And in order to build the functional manufacturing facility was about $2 million or so. A pilot scale facility wasn't much cheaper. So we had to start out with the field of dreams approach. And if you build it, they will come, and hope like hell that the technology worked, because this was a different iteration of engineering that had never been done before. And so that forced us really to raise from the triple Fs, the family, friends, and fools. We had the fortune of starting our fundraising efforts in early January 2021. So everybody knows what happened by March. The world shut down. The money was moving in different places. I mean, it was a hellish time. And I have often said that I will have to leave the country, if not the planet, if I get a chance, if we fail, because it's mostly family, friends, neighbors. I mean, people who have a little bit to risk. And we raised our first $3 million on the backs of those who were just very small, non-institutional investors. We had lots of conversations with venture cap, but for various reasons, risk aversion, lack of fit with mandates, lack of creativity to make a deal structure that works for everybody. No early sales, so the challenges in valuing a company always has some friction between venture and founders. Naturally, founders think their company's worth more, and venture thinks it's worth less, and you have this friction. So there are challenges there. And again, we tried to do things like, how about this? Within X number of years, you'll be the first to be bought out at a 10X. Is that acceptable? We think it's going 1,000 or 100 or whatever, but if you want your guaranteed out, then let's create that into a deal. And that just wasn't commonplace. So like Mina said, going overseas, great opportunities. Again, similarly, I've found lots of risk aversion in the United States, and I'm a bit of a nationalist, so I wanted to keep this as Canadian as possible. And for us, it non-dilutive, family, friends, and then driving as fast as we can to cash generation through sales. Not always everybody's possibility. But I will highlight one of the NPC programs that allowed us to build some roads, and again, a road is somewhere between $250,000 to $1 million per kilometer. So those programs only go so far as well, but it gets that field demonstration. So everything we do, we're looking for a commercial partner. All we want to be is an ingredient supplier, and so that needs some validation and demonstration. While there is good soft funding, again, many applications take a lot of time. The pots of money expire before you get done your application. I'll highlight SDTC and CanExport as examples. They're either oversubscribed or going through various iterations of challenges. Oftentimes, a company is limited to one active application in a program, whereas there could be 2 or 3 that help them out. So it's kind of like a starvation diet, if you will. And again, it's there's outside funding pots too that our partners, our clients could apply for. So in our case, Green Municipal Fund was one, but similarly, they didn't thread the needle on the perfect fit. And so these things just become inelastic or unable for us to target. And I think we're going to talk about if we had an ideal program later, Shelley. So I'll save some of those comments for later. But yeah, it's a hard slog.
Thanks, Tyler. I know how difficult it is when you're watching these things from your home offices or wherever to listen to people just talk and talk for 15, 20 minutes at a time. So I'm just going to open it up. Are there any quick questions from the audience about or comments on the capital challenge that we've just been talking about for the last 10 or 15 minutes? Oh. Okay, so we have a couple of questions here. So can you talk about your customers' existing or potential and how you can start generating revenue with sales? Maybe I'm going to let you raise your hand. Who wants to try and tackle that one?
I can. We've got customers. So 440 some odd municipalities in Ontario and everywhere else in the world continue to build roads and refurbish roads. So how we start generating revenue is we start training the companies that the customers hire to build their roads, work with them, find partnerships. Then we go and talk to the customer or the client that creates the demand pull. So if somebody wanted pink asphalt, then an asphalt company would develop it, but they are not pushing new innovation at their customer because status quo is simple. So we have to convince our customer that they need to pull this innovation into the marketplace. And again, that's just a monotonous progress of meeting them, of being authentic, like Jennifer said, being honest and open about what our product can do, showing the demonstrations, finding enough money. Thank you, NPC, for having some field demonstrations that people can come and feel and touch. They all seem to want to see things with their own magical eyes and get their perspective on that. So it was just figuring out the network and getting ingrained in that network, all of which takes time. I'm an ag guy, and so road building is brand new to me and similar to most of our team.
So we have another question, which I'm going to take a stab at, but either of the panelists, you can chime in. So the question is, how would a bioeconomy strategy help solve some of these challenges? Not only capital, but there's others we're going to talk about as we go through. From my perspective, the reasons that other countries are banding together and developing national strategies because there's limited biomass, there's limited natural resources, there's limited money and unless you have a clear strategy, you're going to have different parts of a country potentially going in different directions. And that, in my opinion, is dilutive rather than taking what we have and building an economy and building building our innovation capabilities and then also commercializing them. And we see it now, we have province A that's going to put in a biomanufacturing strategy. And then you have another province that's also going to put in a biomanufacturing strategy. And my idea and what we've been trying to do at NPC, along with other organizations, is really get coordination and collaboration across provinces and territories so that we can actually, be multiplier efforts rather than diluting them. Anybody else have a thought? Jennifer.
Yes, if I can add on to this, I think that having a strategy also allows you to not have kind of cracks. It allows you to have a very linear strategy and not just fund, for example, companies that they are idea stage or early stage, and then when it's at commercialization, oh, no money for that anymore. So like it allows to have a lot of different envelopes of cash at different stages. And also I think that I want to echo something that was said earlier. by NPC took the time to really do a survey with their 80 plus companies about what their challenges are. And I think that's crucial to come up with that strategy, because you have to listen to the companies that will contribute to that strategy, and listening to their first-hand challenges is the only way to have a strategy that makes sense, and that's just not a good message that we want to communicate. It has actually evidence and a strategy. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. So I think what we'll do is we'll move on to one of the other challenges that we heard from our companies, is really about identifying and securing the right partners, whether it be distributors, manufacturers, technology adopters, or customers. So maybe we will start with Ming this time, and just maybe talk about any challenges you've had finding partners, and what you've done to overcome that, and a significant partnership that has truly moved the needle for your company.
Yeah. So you mentioned several different types of partners. I think just I would talk about something relevant for our company.
Sure.
One of the main things that we found challenging in Canada to find is a manufacturing partner. And it really boils down to, in the beginning, we thought, okay, we have a natural plant-based products, and our process in our mind it's a pretty simple, almost 3-step process, right? And we first thought, okay, it would be pretty easy for us to find somebody that would be able to do this here in Canada. And then, we reached out to Darren, recommended us to talk to several potential manufacturers from BC all the way to the East Coast. And what we found out was that almost each partner is kind of missing, each manufacturer we talk to is kind of missing one out of those 3 things that we need in that step. And which turned out for us was like, oh, we thought it was a simple enough process, but it wasn't. And then after looking at the Canadian manufacturers, and then we again have to look down south and to look some of the US manufacturers and see if they have more of that. I think what I got from that was there's a bit of lack of infrastructures in that regard here in Canada. There are a lot of facilities that are, they have some founded foundations that are in there, but a lot of them are crippled in the sense that they don't have the entire kind of capability. It's missing some parts of that. So that has been our biggest challenge in finding a manufacturing partner here. So solutions, I mean, we're still looking for some. One way we're doing is looking down south to the US to see, or overseas to see somebody else may have it. So yeah, I'll turn it to others.
Fair enough. Nina.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I do echo what Ming said, manufacturing. I mean, the way we did it in-house for us, it was to build our own kind of manufacturing pilot scale to demonstrate the scalability of the technology. And we, thankfully did find someone who was willing to partner with us in manufacturing moving forward. But I agree, like taking an idea, especially if it's a deep tech from lab to scale up, it gets a lot more complicated. It's like a whole can of worms that you open up once you think about how do I produce, not 1 or 2 or hundreds, but thousands and 10,000s. And every time you scale up an order of magnitude, it gets more complicated, and there's a lot of stuff to figure out. And so in terms of other partnerships that we've had, we've been lucky to develop some key partnerships with some packaging manufacturers around the world. One of the ones that are out there in public is a strong partnership with Mitsubishi Chemical Corp in Japan. And they're quite big, and we've been working with them for a few years now, and they've helped us to resolve a whole bunch of challenges that we've had, in addition to obviously being interested in our technology. In terms of the Canadian ecosystem, I think having a strategy, like you said, Shelley, is extremely important, because when you look at what Ming kind of said earlier, you're looking at this startup like a baby, you want to look at all the different elements that is needed to kind of help this company grow, and having the capacity to network within Canada and reach certain people quickly rather than kind of waste. Because if every one of us is trying to do something similar, like, design engineering firm that can help me design a scale-up process, like rather than all of us kind of going and searching on our own, having a database where you can actually look through it and save everyone the time and the startups the time. All of these things, like small things, but once they're put together, they could have a huge impact on how fast we go. To Tyler's point earlier, every single company of us wants to move as fast as possible towards sales, and scale up is one of those things. And NPC's funding, again, I mentioned for our scale up line, was essential because that helps us identify a design engineering firm that was willing to build that line with us and kind of get that up and running as fast as we can, so that we can prove the scalability and move kind of to the next phase, which is large scale manufacturing. So I think overall, in terms of partnerships for manufacturing, for suppliers of our different ingredients, and NPC has actually helped us also identify partners as third-party service providers. So, as a small company, we don't necessarily have access to all the analytical chemistry or all the material science that we need to confirm, and so we had to rely on third parties for that, and NPC has helped us identify some of those. So again, I iterate the need for a structured system or a strategy to kind of help us find the needed partnerships within the different silos, whether they're manufacturing or third-party science labs, or and have all of that available to startups for easy access can help us move forward a lot faster and get to sales a lot faster.
Thank you, Mina. I'm just going to comment on one thing that you said. A wise person told me a long time ago, don't say you're lucky. It's a little bit of luck and a lot of hard work. These things don't just happen. So give yourself some credit on that one. Tyler.
Yeah, I'll just add a few things. I mean, again, ours is unique in that we have road construction companies that provide service to things like provinces, municipalities. There's equipment that's involved. There's R&D and other expertise. But in a comment too, before I get into the partnerships, is in the bioeconomy, I think I've learned long ago, whether I'm right or wrong, there are three things that come as more important to green, and that is price, performance, and process. So if you are not competitive in all three of those things first, easy to integrate into a process, again, equivalent or better performance and equivalent or lower price, green doesn't often matter to our clients. They need to get the job done. And there's not a whole bunch of money to experiment with that kind of thing. For us, a key partner was expertise. So people that give us credibility, like I said, not a civil engineer, not even a road guy. We had to find the person that others would listen to and the companies that others would listen to. So again, kudos to you. You've got access to a program that is access to expertise. We haven't tapped into that one yet, but that's one that I think is critical. And it's not expertise that you get from innovation hubs like your local entrepreneur in residence necessarily. These are people that are recognized globally or nationally or whatever in their field of expertise. And it may not come from an innovation hub. It may come from outside. And how do you find funding to tap into those people and get that validation for your company? Second for us, the partnership with Dufferin, as I mentioned, was key because people trust them. They're a tier 1 paving company. If they're looking at this technology, it must be interesting. Therefore, I'm willing to take a bit of a risk as a potential client, even if they're not the ones paving my roads or dealing with my roads. So we've had a number of challenges along the way, and yes, key partnerships, Shelley, is nothing but critical. And you never know where you find the diamond in the rough for the person that you need to access. And so having funding to access that person, whether they're an American, Canadian, or otherwise, is very important.
And Jennifer, do you have anything that you would like to add?
Yeah, just rapidly, maybe. I think there's a lot of good funding for like project with partners. I do think that a way to better structure it would probably be to write a project and then kind of get the funding based on you finding a partner. I think having kind of the funding already secured as well as the reputation of the funding agencies behind you would help you secure a partner if you have to go out on your own and find one with not necessarily having a product already available to test is kind of hard. So in my experience, having kind of the funding already secured, or like I said, a reputable funder there behind you can help you get some of that step up. We've had some very important partnerships that have really helped us secure funding. So I think they're crucial to also help you develop and bring your product to market, because no company wants to stay relying on funding forever. They want to make their own by making revenue. So yeah, that would be my last thing I wanted to add.
All right, we'll do the same thing again. Take a quick break to see if there's any questions from the audience. Any comments? We got a little bit of a quiet break there, so we'll move on. We've already talked. All of you have touched on the importance of scaling, and I want to dig a little bit deeper about that. It's not necessarily, it's access to manufacturing is one, but what about more details like technological issues, regulatory issues? What did you need to overcome them, whether it would be adding people to your team or having to raise additional finances? Just any kind of example of kind of digging a little bit deeper on scale. So Ming, I'm going to start with you.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Shelley. Scaling is pretty tightly connected with the manufacturing. And the challenges I think we found so far with regards to scaling is that, again, just the kind of lack of expertise that can help us to overcome all the technical challenges. We, again, jumped through quite a few different potential partners when it comes to scaling. And eventually now we're working with the NRC, National Research Council, to scale our technology up. However, kind of echo what I said earlier, is that after scaling, and then what happens is question mark for us right now, because when we talk to NRC said, yes, we have the tools and we have the team that can help you to bring it, to scale it, bring you a standard operation procedure at the end of the day, and that will be the end of it. But afterwards, you're on your own to look for somebody that can actually manufacture it for you, right? So and then it's kind of what do we do, or who do we look for in Canada after that step? It's basically our big question mark. But just kind of, if you're just talking about scaling itself as the technical challenges, I think we're lucky, we ended up having the chance to work with an RC on it. But all the previous conversation kind of okay, we don't have the right expertise for you guys, or we don't have the right tools in our facilities for you guys. And there was still lack of that. That's what we saw before. Yeah.
Thank you. Jennifer.
My answer is a bit boring because it's always related to funding. I think I'm going to try to change it, but basically for us, what we're developing is totally new. No one has done it before. It's new from scratch. So we have to build our own manufacturing facility with our own kind of process, which all comes up to how do we pay for it and how can we build it. So that's why it ties back to funding. But I think expertise is also super relevant. I think taking it back to what Tyler said earlier, I think is about getting access to maybe a database of people who have different kind of expertise that could be not necessarily about making milk with mammary cells, but biological or pharmaceutical background to help scale solutions, and kind of give us a narrowing down the people that have the relevant expertise, and also the people that are willing to give their expertise to these projects, I think would be super helpful to accelerate kind of that research for us to get to scale. So yeah, funding and expertise database.
And listen, your comments are really not boring. They're about the stage of where you are, and they change on the stage. So don't worry about potentially sounding repetitive. It's the reality that and as you know, I think I told you this, the first time I saw your company come across my desk and I said, milk without the cow, I laughed first and then I thought, oh my goodness, this is going to be good. And so it is. All right, Tyler, you last one on this question.
Jennifer, I'm a dairy farmer. Don't know if you knew that, but I love milk without the cow. That concept is wonderful. I think there's a huge future, but inevitably you're going to have to go through some of those regulatory environments with Dairy Farmers of Ontario or Canada and deal with that kind of lashback that the industry is going to have, the competition. So in my case, scaling, for example, I've got to be careful not to be too disruptive. So I talked about carbon negative roads and 100% recycling of asphalt. And that means no more asphalt. We might not need any more hot asphalt. It's going to take a while to get there without doubt. But if we are targeted and systematically eliminated from market because we're so disruptive, then we got to be careful about that. So in the meantime, how do we make asphalt better? How do we work with companies to make a brighter future that will take, 10, 15, 20 years as they decapitalize some of that production? For us, we have to scale three things at the same time. One, the demand, two, the capital to expand, and three, the team to produce the stuff. So it's all at the same time, and that is very difficult for a small team of 2 to 4 most relevant people in our company are doing everything. So again, identifying the talent that's hard. Scale up for us could be the production of 10 more plants at one go. I mean, we're talking about companies who could use millions and millions of liters at a time. So we have to be able to do that, and that might be a $30 to $50 million injection of capital at the next stage. I think the other thing about scale for us, Shelley, is that we have to then convince our users, our clients or whatever, key partners, that we can scale and we can provide the volumes that they need. So if you're looking at packaging, Ming, I mean, you can't, like, as you say, you can't make a square centimeter of product and expect it to be on the market in no time. You got to be able to show them that you can make tens of thousands of square meters of product. And that becomes a real challenge, very expensive. And again, comes back to funding, as Jennifer said. So there's a whole other level of the next layer of funding. Does that exist in Canada? Major challenge and something critical to every company's development.
Thank you.
Hey, Shelley,
Yes,
can I just add one last thing to the scaling?
absolutely.
I think there's one thing that maybe a lot of people are not quite aware is when we talk about scaling, maybe to some people, we're just simply talking about something that's already, the technology is built and solid as is, and then all you need to do is just simply add the volume or add to the production capacity. But the scaling itself, when we say that there's lack of expertise around it, is because scaling itself, it could also almost be R&D work, because there's just so many things that change once the size change.
Yeah.
And you almost have to go back to tackle some brand new R&D issues when you're in that stage. And it's really not as simple as somebody says, oh, it's just 10x the size, right? Yeah. So when we say, lack of expertise is really lack of people who had all of that knowledge about how to optimize or change and shorten the path of tackling those challenges as the size goes up. And then that's a key thing.
Yeah. And I don't know if you know this, but my first, I guess, real job, I ran a spinoff from a university, and we had a big multinational partner, and we scaled from like, I'm talking 100 mils to 25 liters, and we had 10 key milestones, and we missed the most important one by a smidge, and we had to go back and try to back to the bench basically and try to fix it. And it takes a lot of grit to get through that when you're trying to scale up the technology. Tyler?
Yeah.
Just a quick thing, Ming. When you think about that next stage of scale, and NGen comes to mind, a company that could provide the engineering expertise, as you say, because it's a whole new level of R&D, and then putting all the pipes and wires and things together to make your stuff. But it's not like you can enter the funnel too early to say, when we get here, then we need 10 million bucks to do this. Instead, it's the start-stop system where, okay, now we're finally at a relevant stage. We can apply for this. Oh, the money's all gone, or the cycle's going to take a year, or whatever it is. So these are killers to companies if you can't layer on things that are smoother in the attempts to scale.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. I'm going to change gears a little bit, and then after this round of discussion, I'm going to open it up to the audience. So the whole NPC team has really had a lot of experience over the years dealing with innovation programs, government programs of just about any type you can, provincial, federal. And so at NPC, we try very hard to constantly change our approach so that we can meet the needs of founders and entrepreneurs. So if you guys had your dream funding program as an early stage company, what would it look like? And I don't care if it makes any sense, just like, what would it look like? So Jennifer, I'm going to start with you because you've been talking a lot about money. So I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, I talk about money a lot. I guess my ideal program would be something that really follows the growth of a company. So having funding at each stage of development to really line up milestone with private funding at every stage. So I guess that would be the ideal. And then the format would probably be everything that makes the life of the entrepreneur simpler, so less paperwork, and also just gives them a lot more cash flow agility. Of course, that's just an ideal scenario. I know there are some constraints always, but yeah, I think quarterly reporting is good. In terms of NPC reporting, I think that's the lightest that I've had, so good job on that. But yeah, upfront grants and just allowing just more agility in terms of cash flow is really important. So those are my...
If it's helpful, I understand the reporting. Yeah. Mina.
Yeah, can I say something about the scale-up thing, Shelley, before I jump in?
Yes.
Very quickly.
Listen, you can say whatever you want within reason, Mina.
Oh, sweet. Awesome. Yeah. No. Just a quick thing on the scale-up thing that we were talking about. One of the challenges we had is, because money's an issue, like Jennifer was pointing out, it's having someone who can help us build our first scale-up line, which we actually, to Tyler's point, we were making 1.5 centimeter squared films to test all our stuff. And now we can produce with the scale-up line 250,000 meters squared of film per year, which is a huge scale-up for us. But one of the things we had that was challenging is finding someone that can work with us within a closed budget. Because once you start scaling up, everybody wants an open budget because there's always going to be the extra cost that was not foreseen that is going to add up, and you're not going to have the funding to do it. And so I think one of the key things is negotiating a closed budget, which we managed to do. It was very challenging, but we managed to negotiate a closed budget. So that's the one thing I wanted to mention. The other, to your question, I would echo Jennifer. Reporting, if reporting has to be done quarterly, that's great. I would think a model where non-dilutive funding is given both as an advance/reimbursement. So there's an advance that can be given as soon as the money as soon as the grant is accepted, and then the rest could be reimbursed. That's good for cash flow, because ultimately for companies like ours in deep tech, cash flow is king. Cash flow is king big time. So all we're trying to do is, even if we have non-dilutive, but we can't access it fast enough to subsidize the private money, it's going to make it very hard for us to manage cash flow. So that brings me to my next point, which is also the length of time it takes, for the review process, which I know that, federal government is involved in that, and that takes time, but ultimately that needs to be expedited because
what would be your ideal timeline?
Ideal timeline would be not more than 3 weeks to a month, max. So that would be ideal to manage cash flow. And I think I'll stop here. I have a few more things, but I'll stop here because I know we're getting close to the end of the meeting.
Tyler.
Yeah, interesting. Lots of good things being said there. So I like the idea of a program where non-dilutive, dilutive, government and regulatory kind of either work in lockstep or work as a team to say, we're putting a bet on this company. We need to see the continuum of needs that this company needs. And we will unlock doors to things like expedited regulatory or whatever, because NPC said they're good enough to do it, not me. Of course, I, the entrepreneur, wants everything as a priority to others. But it's this idea that you have flexibility in a program and that predictability that once we get to this step, you're worth more. You're worth investing again in. And we are truly going to get these things to market, not just here, walk our plank, and then hopefully there's another platform you land on and you can walk their plank and see what happens, see what hits. Again, complementary, Shelley, NPC gives us access to real experts, not your experts, but experts that we need. Like Jennifer said, the paperwork has been minimal. Your flexibility has been impressive. And I'm not just saying this, I'm saying that all programs should have this kind of thing. I've always thought that there should be some reasonable expectation that companies who succeed pay back what they got. So you can put it back into the fund. It might take us 10 years, but if we're successful commercially, we could give that money back and help support your programs. And I don't know what people think of that, but and within government, I know it's difficult to think innovatively or like entrepreneurs, but it would be nice to have the Department of Get Stuff Done Quickly or whatever it would be called. Better name, I'm sure. Musk will come up with one or something. But achieving the targets efficiently. There was a program that we really wanted to access called Canada First Buyer Program or something, where relevant, the government could be your first client, but they had some ridiculous stipulations that you couldn't have sold anything commercially and yada, yada, yada. Like there's just these barriers that don't need to belong. The government builds roads. They have provincial parks. I'm using my example right now, but it's just where applicable and you're putting money into things already through programs like yours, why not become a client and test the product? And again, fast track regulatory where you help more efficiently achieve your climate goals, those kinds of things. So tons of flexibility and lots of sharing the baton, passing the baton between a bunch of different factors that are in lockstep.
Thank you. So you do know this is being recorded, Tyler. So when you hit the big time, I'm coming back and you're going to be an investor in a new fund that we're going to create. So you got that on record.
Wonderful.
Ming, I'm going to ask you if you had anything to add, because we've got about 15 minutes left and I want to open it up for some more questions from the audience.
We just repeat one thing, the founders.
Fair enough. We've got that. Fund the founders. Got it. Okay. There are a couple. I'm going to open up the questions to the audience. Matthew, I'm going to ask you just to perhaps put a little clarifier comment in there. So I'm not sure if it's a question or a comment. We do have one comment that is directed at a question that's directed at NPC, and it is, how long does the fast track to finance program take? That can be a matter of weeks. It is approved by the management team, so the approval process is relatively quick, and it also depends if you have a consultant or an expert that you want to work with and you've already identified them, or if you're coming to us looking for a potential referral to say it's regulatory, then it takes a little longer because you have to make sure it's the right fit for you, and then we just review it and then we make a decision very quickly. Any other questions from the
There's one there, Shelley, about funding programs being more akin to due diligence for venture.
Yeah, and yes, that was from Matthew. So what if funding programs are more similar to investor due diligence? then we can train entrepreneurs to get more investment instead of applying for non-dilutive grants. What are your thoughts on this?
Go ahead, Ming. You look like you're breathing in, but I got something to say.
Oh, well, no, I like this sort of hybrid approach. I think there are areas that we can benefit from this hybrid approach. I don't know exactly how, but I have seen, like the benefits of certain things that VCs do when it comes to investigating, evaluating company if it's worth doing. And also, of course, there's the non-dilutive benefits. So I was just looking at a comment like, yeah, it would be nice to kind of find a way to get the benefit of the both world.
Yeah.
My thoughts on this one are, being venture ready is quite a long process. It's like a living plan, a living business plan. And I can't tell you the number of times we have gotten minuscule recommendations for how to improve our pitch deck that just become flabbergasting and frustrating at some point. Like 1,000 versions of our pitch deck. Which one do you want? I mean, we're telling you the basic story. If we don't get it across to you, yes, that's a problem. Doing diligence on companies that have no cash flow is difficult for everybody. And so if you're in the stage of not having cash flow, then you have to look at all kinds of other things, possibility, potential, and past investment and likelihood of success and all that. So while I like the concept, I think the programs that you go through are preparing you to go and seek venture funding with time. So we participated in something called CDL, Creative Destruction Labs. It was a very useful experience, lots of great networking. We didn't get any investment out of that, despite the fact that I thought, we were deserving. We were getting towards a good commercial state. So there's a lot of finicky stuff that happens in the background. And again, you need somebody holding your hand at early stages, getting you ready. But you're absolutely right, Matthew. We got to get off the teat at some point. Jennifer, that's for you. and make sure that we can find our own funding. You can't expect government to do it all the time. But strategic inputs, and again, more than anything, the strategic relationships that help us open doors that we as the entrepreneur don't necessarily know we need to walk through. So Shelley, that one-stop shop where you say, look, I know the people at MTO who will do such and such for you. Here's what we'll do together. NGen funding that might help people scale up their engineering process, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I have one more thing here to say. Investors actually like it when you have non-dilutive. You are actually more likely to raise money from venture capital if you have non-dilutive to match their dollar, because their dollar now is going further. So I wouldn't say that one replaces the other. Like, yes, we have to keep going after non-dilutive because that's incentivizing for venture capital. The other thing is we're raising a round right now. For example, we're kind of close to getting that done, but it takes 8 months for VCs to do their due diligence. This is not a model that can be adopted by funding agencies. That wouldn't make much sense. So training entrepreneurs to pitch to investors, 100%. Putting them in touch with VCs, 100%. But getting rid of it or asking for less non-dilutive, I don't agree to that.
And I spent some time in June, which seems like forever ago, with a bunch of U.S. investors in San Francisco. And to your point, they were, very positive about Canadian companies because they could access non-dilutive funding. And then when you had the exchange rate, so it was really a good opportunity for them. We talked a lot about venture cap, but have any of you dealt with or raised from angels? And what role do you see them playing in this whole continuum? Ming, I think you had your hand up first.
Mina spoke first. You want to just...
Okay, go ahead, Mina.
All right. Yeah, I'll take that one quickly. Yes, from angels are very good at early stage. There's a limit. Angels, usually come as consortiums. We've had Ange Quebec come into our company. Again, they're early stage. They put small check sizes, but they usually come 10s or 20s, to give you that check size. One thing to keep in mind when you're dealing with angels, though, is your cap table, because as you get angels, the more of them you have, the more they go on your cap table, and the harder to manage it is. So good for early stage, not for big checks later on.
Yeah, we spent some time helping entrepreneurs clean up their cap tables when we had our equity fund, just to get it kind of to a place where it made a little bit more. Jennifer, did you have anything to add?
Just quickly, sometimes the risk tolerance is a bit with angels. So like for hard tech, specifically, it's to attract, but we do have investors that happen to also be advisors. So I think that's a great way to get them involved, because it's just funding, so advice and expertise that can really help you.
There is a question I don't answer to. The question is EDC, Export Development Canada loan, are they considered part of government stacking? Do either one of you know that? I don't know the answer. Okay. Any final? Yep.
They are.
They are? Okay. Thank you. I am getting an audio quality. So anything that any key points you would like to raise before we let people get to, or heaven forbid, another Zoom call?
I would just want to end on a positive note that there are a lot of companies in Canada, and yes, we need support, but I think attracting a lot of opportunities. So I think we should just attract more and more to make Canada benefit. I want a little bit, like Tyler said. So let's avoid the kind of fleeing to the US and Europe and try to with funding.
And on a positive note, I mean, I know we talked a lot about challenges and that today, but I'm personally very grateful for the government of Canada. To date has invested 35 million in NPC. So I think that, and we just try to be the best stewards of that money as we can and offer as much help to early stage companies in our space. So thank you all. I know taking an hour and a half your day is a little rough. So thank you from NPC for participating. And I'm going to pass it back over to.
Hi. Wow, what a conversation. There was one question that late. I don't know whether you saw it, but all foreign venture capital has been mentioned as a factor. Does Canada retaining its biotech companies? I guess the implication is, do they all, as they grow, do they just sell to foreign interests, or do they stay in Canada? I think that's what that questioner was getting at. Does anyone have any insight or comment on that?
I have heard over many bits of experience, Jeff, that a lot of Canadian companies have their exit plan to be selling to larger companies more so than our counterparts in the US, for example. Mm-hmm. And again, I can't remember who mentioned it. The focus on international markets is important. Who knows what the era of Trump is and tariffs and things like that mean to companies like ours or the ones on this call, but you inevitably want to have access to those markets. And sometimes that means you have to go set up shop there, or at least a subsidiary. So yeah, we want to keep the headquarters here as often as possible, while at the same time being globally relevant. So from the entrepreneurial standpoint, you do what you got to do. From the nationalism standpoint, I want to stay Canadian and grow impact around the world. And that is going to become an increasing challenge.
And the policy.
Yeah, I'll add to what Tyler said. Oh,
yeah.
Sorry.
No, go on.
Sorry, I was going to add to what Tyler said. Bringing in foreign capital. So we have to think of this in two ways. Because we do have US investors. So when a US puts money for us to grow fresher in Nova Scotia, where we are right now, we're hiring Nova Scotia. Those people are paying taxes into Nova Scotia. That foreign investment has an economic impact on Canada. at that moment that it comes into the company. Then there's the other question, obviously, is when, eventually, and all that capital gains, if you're, you have to think about that, or if you're setting shop and that becomes your HQ, those you have to as an entrepreneur, because some of the US would ask us to have HQ in the States, and those ones we have actually refused from. We want to keep HQ in Canada. We can have some activity in the US, but not HQ. So it's important to distinguish the benefits to Canada, because it can come in many flavors, including hiring, that tax that goes back in income tax.
Great. Thank you. So thank you, Mina and Jen and Tyler and Ming for a stimulating discussion. I learned a lot. And thanks to our passion and entrepreneurship, Canada's natural industry is a growing concern. And of course, thanks also to Shelley for great moderating, Shelley, but also to your organization for supporting these entrepreneurs in such an innovative way. And congratulations on your first investment from your new Nadera Ventures. We want to follow that journey with you as well. It's a very interesting move that you've made. So to all of you who attended this webinar, you're invited to register for the 24th Annual Research Money Conference, which will be in Ottawa next May. And the super early bird pricing ends at the end of this month. So take advantage of it and register. I think Danielle is going to throw a link in the chat. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone for attending, and thanks again to Natural Products Canada and all the entrepreneurs who spoke, and to all of you who have attended. Have a great day.